Have you ever had one of those days where it's just been really, really busy? Maybe you find yourself on your feet almost all day, right? On those days, it doesn't matter if you're wearing your most comfortable pair of shoes. Like by the end of the day, you are deadbeat tired. Your feet are tired and hurting and you're ready to get out of those shoes. And so the minute you get home, whether you're in your living room or in your kitchen, in your bedroom, it doesn't matter. Like the minute you get home, you want to kick off your shoes. And so when you do, you kick them off and that floor hits different at that point, right? Maybe you've been up on your feet all day cleaning your house and you've been walking around the same space all day long. But when you kick off your shoes in that space, that floor hits differently than it did all day, right? There's something about that. There's no greater feeling than after a busy day, kicking off your shoes and just finally being able to just breathe, relax, rest, right? Well, Pastor Andrea, she talked to you guys last week about Moses, right? And about a part of his life that we find in the middle of the book of Exodus. We're going to backtrack a little bit, and we're gonna look at an instance in his life that happened in the early part of Exodus, in Exodus chapter 3. At this point in Moses' life, he is on the run. He's on the run from his problems. He's on the run from his past mistakes. He's even on the run from his old life. He's trying to get away and restart. And so he finds himself in the middle of nowhere in the desert. And he takes this job as a shepherd, right? A shepherd in the desert. If you don't know, a shepherd's job is to take out the sheep from their pen early in the morning and to go and to find a nice field where they can graze on grass and plants all day long. So Moses is a shepherd in the desert. That has some challenges, right? Like there's not a lot of places in the desert where you can find nice fields to feed sheep all day on. And so I would think that Moses, once he found a nice place for the sheep to eat, he probably went back there constantly, over and over again, day in and day out, every day, going back to the same place, right? And so Moses, on a day that's like any other day, trying to hide from his past life and his past mistakes, he's walking up this mountain, trying to find a place for his sheep to be fed, going to a place that he's been 100 times. But this time is different, because as he's walking up the mountain, he notices that a bush is on fire. And he's immediately drawn to it. Like immediately his attention goes to this bush, and so he goes to check it out. And what's crazy is that if you've ever been around a campfire or any type of fire in a fire pit or fireplace, you know that logs just kind of start to break apart eventually, right? And they turn into ash. But this bush was not burning up. It wasn't breaking apart. It was just on fire. It was just there. And all of a sudden, something crazy happens with this burning bush as Moses walks up. So in Exodus chapter 3, verse 4, it says this: "When the Lord saw that he was coming to look, God called to him out of the bush, 'Moses, Moses.'" Now I need to stop right there, because I like to imagine these stories playing out in real life, because they happened. They actually happened. Moses was a real person who encountered this burning bush. And this burning bush talked to him. It said, "Moses, Moses." If a bush, whether it was burning or not, started talking to me, I'd be really concerned and really freaked out at that moment. And I don't know if Moses was or wasn't, but I know for a fact that he was brave, because Moses says, "I'm here." He says, "I'm here. Whoever's calling to me out of this bush, I'm here." And so it says this in verse 5. "Then the Lord said, 'Don't come any closer. Take off your sandals, because you are standing on holy ground.'" So in this encounter with this burning bush that actually, come to find out, is God trying to get Moses' attention, right? The first thing that God says to Moses, the first instruction he gives to him, is to take off his sandals, because he's standing on holy ground. That's so interesting to me, because Moses has walked along this path day in and day out. He's been in the same space for months or years or however long it's been, and yet now he encounters God, and God has this urgent conversation to have with Moses, and you can read about it in the later parts of chapter 3. But the first instruction God gives Moses isn't the pressing matter at hand. No, it's this instruction to kick off your shoes. Take off your shoes, because the ground you're on is holy. Or another way to say that, the ground you're on is set apart. It's different than any ground you've ever stepped on. What's interesting is Moses had been in that space before. Moses had walked on that ground before. And I was reminded of this story and of this experience in Moses' life, because right now we're walking in the same spaces all the time, because we're kind of stuck, right? Or we're stuck at home, we're stuck going to the same places, the same spaces right now. And it kind of got me thinking, like, in this space that Moses had been in, God tells him to kick off his shoes, because somehow in this moment, in this instance, the ground he was standing on was different. And I wonder, is God constantly trying to get us to recognize that he's present in the spaces we find ourselves in? The spaces we constantly are living in and walking in and are always stuck in. And is God in those spaces with us? And is he calling out to us? And are we not listening? When we kick off our shoes after a busy day, it hits different. Our feet hit the floor and they hit the carpet, and you feel the grains of the carpet under your feet, or you feel the coolness of the hard floor under your feet. You recognize something different than you had all day, even if you were walking on that space with shoes on. And what's interesting is, like, in life and in our everyday life, we constantly are in the same spaces right now, all the time. And we may not recognize anything significant or anything different about them. They're ordinary, right? And yet, God is calling us, and God is desiring an opportunity to create holy ground within those spaces. To create a space where he can let us know that we're not alone. That we're not just stuck in this space alone, but that he is with us, and that he has something to say to us. And so today, as you go about your day and you walk in the same spaces, I want to challenge you with this. Where is God calling you to kick off your shoes? Where is God? What are the spaces that God is calling you to make into holy ground? To make time for him to speak into your life? To make time to recognize that maybe it's not so ordinary. Maybe it can be a space where God can fill you with life and with hope and with needed care in this time. Because quite honestly, it's easy, even in times like this, when we're stuck not doing much, to kind of forget to spend time with God. And yet God is constantly calling us out, constantly trying to make space that is significant in our ordinary spaces. And so today I want to challenge you with this. Whether you take time today, kick off your shoes, take a moment to recognize how your feet feel on the ground. Recognize things that you haven't taken into consideration in the spaces around you, like the sound of the fan pushing air, or the sound of nature outside your window. Take time to be quiet and to recognize the things that you haven't in that space. And once you're in a place where you're recognizing that it's different this time, right? The space that I'm in, I've never considered how this sounds in this space. I've never considered what this feels like to be sitting in this space like this for this long. At that point, just invite God to come into that space and to begin to speak to you. And I would encourage you to get into the Word and to find just a short portion of Scripture to read and to ask God to speak to you through that. And so you could open up to Exodus chapter 3 and read the rest of what happens with Moses in this encounter with God. Another great place would be Psalm chapter 1, the first Psalm. That's a great space to be in right now. Another one would be Matthew chapter 6, verse 25, and going on from there. If you're dealing with anxiety or worry right now, that's a great space to allow God to come in and to make a space that was common, something different. And so today, I want to challenge you to just take time to find holy ground in your common spaces and allow God to show you who He is. And maybe it'll change how you interact with the people around you. Maybe it'll change how you see your everyday life, even stuck in this quarantine.